Good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. My name is Jason Dietz. Alongside myself is Vanu. She and I are working together. That's Vanu on the right, in case you're paying attention at home. So we're gonna take a little bit of time here and go through some features, talking specifically about mobile apps and emergency plans while using a mobile app at a conference or an event. So that's going to be most of the content today. Vanu is going to take us through a little bit of the housekeeping to kind of keep things rolling. So Vanu, go ahead.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Just want to do a couple of housekeeping things for today. Everyone is going to be muted, but if you have any questions, definitely put that in the chat section of the GoToMeeting panel. We'll try to get to all your questions at the end, and if not, we'll address them by email later, and we'll share that with everyone. This webinar today is being recorded, and we will send out a link to the presentation in the next couple of days so that you have that. And again, if you have any questions, definitely ping us as they come up, and we'll address them when we can. So thank you for joining us.
So just real quick, there's going to be 5 areas that we're going to discuss today. We're going to talk about features such as floor plans, instructions, push notifications, connectivity, as well as contacts. So those are going to be the 5 areas that we will discuss as we are working through the process today.
Just to back up a little bit, so I've actually been in the meeting planning world for about 20 years and have seen how technology has really grown in those years. And even with mobile app technology, it keeps changing month by month, day by day. So we're trying to keep up with it. And a lot of what we're sharing today are based on best practices, based on our own experience, and there's also some lessons learned. Sometimes our best things that we can share with you is when we've failed and have learned to do it better. So we'll start off with the floor plans. How many of us have done a mobile app and you've got these floor plans that your convention planner has given you, and it is like a CAD drawing, and unless you know what you're talking about, you can't tell which room you're in or what it's for general session or breakout. And basically, you're seeing a floor plan that is very tiny on your screen, very difficult. You know, there are things that you can do to make this a lot easier for your mobile user. Take the floor plan that, you know, first I'd ask the hotel or the convention center if they have a little bit more user-friendly floor plans that kind of strips away all the extra fluff, empty rooms, you know, different stages, whatnot. If they can give you something very simple, I would actually take that and either give it to your graphic designer, or you know what, PowerPoint is my best friend. I always take things and manipulate it in that. And that's actually what I did for this floor plan specifically. I basically went in and said, hey, you know, our general session is going to be in this Texas ballroom. So I put a little label on it just to give the mobile user some frame of reference as to what's happening in terms of the session and what room they're in. They may not always associate that the Texas ballroom is the general session or vice versa. And then I also notated where some of the exits are. You can take this one step further and actually put arrows to exits and other important areas. But I think that this makes it more visually appealing. So there are definitely ways. It doesn't take a long time. Just take that extra step. So things that you might want to consider putting on your floor plan. You may want to separate the floor plans into different categories. For example, I mentioned before, like the general sessions. Perhaps you do a floor plan that's just the general session and shows where the exit is if someone is in the general session area. Breakouts, meals, same thing. So you would have essentially a different floor plan for every major location that you had. Another way to break it up is to do it by different days and times. If you know that in the morning they're all going to be in one location, if it's all general session, then maybe you just put general session, and you also notate the day and time just to help people associate, oh, today, this is where I am. And then you can also have those, depending on your mobile app provider, you can have those floor plans show up only on the specific days that it's relevant to those floor plans. So something to think about there. And then, of course, we don't want to forget about, you know, we're all very cognizant of being ADA friendly and accessibility. That also goes into emergency planning as well. You know, think about having floor plans that are that meet those needs as well, and you have not only locations where special needs or wheelchair accessible exits are, but also maybe you know, phone numbers or give instructions on how they can get assistance if they need it. Then don't forget about your off-site events, whether they're mobile workshops or if they're dinners. You know, give your attendees as much information as they can, you know, directions back to the hotel or a link to maps, just different things like that, just to give them just the additional information just in case they need the assistance. Now, along with that, you know, we all digest information in different ways. Some of us are more visual, where the floor plans come in really handy, and some of us like written instructions. We like everything to be listed 1, 2, and 3 in plain text. You know, a different part of your mobile app, you can actually list those emergency procedures and write those out in text. Say, you know, look for your closest exit, do not run, walk, anything that you think that might be, that's part of your emergency plan that you've planned out before the conference. The other thing is to think about the types of emergencies that you may encounter. For example, if you're in Puerto Rico and you are concerned about hurricanes, it kind of makes sense to put something on your emergency procedure about hurricanes. However, if you're in Iowa, hurricanes may not be so relevant, but what may be relevant is something more like what to do in the case of fire, or what to do in the case of a bomb threat, those types of things. Another thing that you can do is your own security policy. Now, it seems like quite the trend these days with everything that's happened recently, that we're all looking at what our own security policy is. And having that information available for our attendees to let them know that, A, that we're thinking about them, and that we do have policies and procedures in place to help them. And to be able to share that, it doesn't have to be the full document, but maybe the top tips, top policy notes that you'd like to share. And then checklists. You know, if there are things you want people to do specifically for, you know, to give them things to be prepared in cases of emergency. For example, make sure your cell phone is all charged, that they know where the exits are when they go to their sleeping rooms, different things like that. You can definitely put checklists in there to help the attendee just plan their trip, their experience a little bit better so that they're prepared. Security tips as well. If you know you're in a high crime area, perhaps you give your attendees that heads up of, you know, maybe it's not so safe to walk at night by yourself, or things that, you know, don't leave your bag unattended, or if you see a bag unattended, please call security or your conference organizers. But those kind of things can come in handy as well. Local resources. Always great to give resources to our attendees to help themselves. If they're not feeling well, you know, it's great to have a list of, you know, hospitals, emergency numbers, anything that may be relevant. Local pharmacy is great. And all that information we're already probably getting from our convention planner or the concierge. Why not get that information all in one place in your conference app? So think about those things of integrating those. It's information you most likely already have at your fingertips. Now it's just a matter of seeing that if your mobile app provider can actually host that on your platform, and how. But those are just from an information in a floor plan features, some of the things that you can do. Now, Jason's going to talk a little bit about push notifications and what those features can be like.
Yeah, so push notifications obviously, is the idea of, when and if something were to happen that was more along the lines of needed to be emergency notification set. So before there's even, a push notification that's sent out, there's definitely some organizing that needs to be done on the back end prior to the conference or event. Specifically, have some plans in place depending on the locations, the lay of the land, exit strategies, that type of thing. There needs to be kind of like scenarios of what if happens. This is the type of message that we're going to be sending out. So there will be some coordinating prior to the conference to make sure that those proper notifications are kind of set in stone, and then we are able to distribute them as needed. Next question would be is who will make those decisions? Who on site is going to be responsible for notifying people when there is something that needs to be broadcast? So that's important. Who will have the authority to post those types of notifications as well? Maybe it's one person, maybe it's more than one person. But again, these are the types of things where we want to be as organized as possible before going into these conferences, so that things are kind of set up in place so nobody's fumbling. And then as far as the messages are concerned, they need to be simple. They need to be direct. They need to be, not a ton of words. Kind of clear, concise. Also has to be informative. So all those things are very important to relay when it's happening. So push before the notification is pushed. A lot of pre-organization needs to kind of happen before it actually goes out. Now, as far as push notifications are transmitted, this is kind of a nice segue into the next portion, which is connectivity. So some apps that are used, they require to be online or to be hooked to a network for them to be operational. Some are more just cellular based, not hooked to the network. The one nice feature of the application that we're showing is that it is actually operational whether you are hooked up to a network or not. The biggest difference will be that how, like, let's say a push notification were to happen, whereas if you are hooked to a network, it'll be kind of like a standard push notification, whereas it's more of a cellular connection. It'll come through primarily as an SMS type kind of message. So those are some important things to kind of pay attention to. So obviously having service is definitely key if one's not going to be kind of hooked through a network that a hall or a venue might be providing. As far as like syncing and getting real-time data and things like that, our app does actually run in the background, so you are getting real-time updates. You can actually set it so you can either just have it manually do that, or you can have it set push to sync, things like that. So there are different variations as a user you can have set up, but it's good to know that this application is running in the background as well.
Yeah, just to kind of piggyback off of that, Jason, for meeting planners, we're always concerned about that connectivity issue and trying to figure out what the venue offers and what kind of Wi-Fi. Is it cellular? Most venues offer the Wi-Fi service, and it's not only just having it, but also knowing, is it enough for how many attendees you have and how many devices they're going to be using. So the whole bandwidth of your Wi-Fi, or questions that you want to ask of your Wi-Fi provider, whether it's the AV company or the hotel directly. And then also checking the accessibility of that. If you're in the far right-hand corner of a ballroom, are you still going to be able to get access to it? So take a look at those things when you do your site visits, ask those questions. That will make a difference in probably how you're going to be charged, but it also will make a difference in not only if your mobile app works, but in cases of emergency where you need to send out push notifications, whether they're going to get those messages or if it's just the network that you're getting is going to be overwhelmed. Now, recently, here in DC, actually, I actually forfeited going, not using Wi-Fi and bringing in a cellular network. That's a whole nother webinar that'll be coming up soon. But we actually brought in a cellular network into the venue and put routers in every room to make sure that we got access to that service. So everyone was connecting to a cellular tower versus the Wi-Fi network. That gets a little bit complicated, but it worked. It's not, you have to check with the venue, A, if you can do it, B, to make sure that you're able to get that connection from an outside source. So if you're really 10 levels down in a basement somewhere, you know, there may be questions about that, but your cellular provider or the people that are doing your networking can actually test that and answer those questions for you. But definitely talk to your mobile app provider. See how the syncing happens, if it is real time and running in the background all the time, or if the user actually has to push a button to get the sync. Many apps will give you the option, give the user the option to do either or, but be cognizant that what your options are. So if you are sending push notifications, how that information is able to get to people. I know that with the app that we have with EMSSSI, actually does, if it's a SOS emergency kind of notification, it will go out regardless of whether it's Wi-Fi or cellular service. The next feature is emergency contacts. Collecting that information and having that in your mobile app so that if something does, if something does happen, then that information is there in your phone. Many of us sleep with our phones, walk with our phones, eat with our phones, so it's always with us. So if something does happen to you on a personal level, then someone can access your phone to get that information. Some of the pieces of information that I recommend that you, contacts that you have are not only personal contacts of like your mom, dad, spouse, partner, but also put down the organizer's information, the hotel information, hospital information, any other kind of contacts that you want people to have and be able to access and call on their own. Now, we were actually talking about how, is it tedious to put all of this information, the personal contacts, because the organizer information, the resources, all of that you can do on the back end as the organizer. But if your user will find it too cumbersome to put their personal contact on the mobile app, what we actually suggest doing is putting it in the registration form, so in collecting that. So collecting the contact name, the relationship it is to the person. I think it's helpful if someone is calling someone to know how they're related to the person. It doesn't have to be a family relationship, but just to know the connection. Collect the cell phone information, email, and then also include a privacy statement that says that this information is not going to be shared, not published, and it's only used for cases of emergency. What's great is once you've collected this on the registration end, easily sync to your mobile app if your mobile app provider provides that feature, which EMSSSI actually does. And so it's automatic; it'll automatically go there. And again, it's not shared with anyone else, and it's only proprietary to that one person. But you, as the organizer, will have that information in your database to use if you need it. And that's it for today. We do have a few questions. One question that came in terms of where to get all of the emergency information. That information can be collected not only from your convention or hotel representative. They should already have that information in place. You can also get it from your local civic community website. Usually they will post it as well. So that's a great resource to go and capture that. I'll give you a couple of minutes here to see if there are any other questions. Now, just to tell you a little bit about who we are, Jason is with Emilimu, which provides technical solutions for associations, nonprofits, and that includes mobile apps, learning management systems, and online communities. And then I'm with Apex Meetings, and we're a meeting planning company, and we also have our own registration software that we work with other mobile app companies like Emilimu, and all of this technology can be nicely integrated if you would like. Now, if you would like, sometimes it helps to grab some coffee and talk with someone about brainstorming about ideas for your meeting specifically. If you want to sit down and grab a cup of coffee, whether it's by phone or in person, we're happy to do that, sit down with you and help you figure out the best way to use your app and make the most out of it.
Yeah, so if there aren't any questions that come to mind now, my information you see is down there. Feel free to reach out. You can shoot me. Also, what we will be doing is sending you a link to the recording of today's webinar, so you can use that and reference back to it. And of course, our website, emilimu.com, has a lot of information as well, with not only that platform, but a few others that may be of interest to you. So I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Again, please feel free to reach out and contact us, and look forward to hopefully hearing from you all. Thank you very much.